afternoon, kids, and welcome back to I Love Learning with Miss Leah. And today we are going to do another science experiment. Oh, and it's so easy to do. Wait till you see what it is. And these are the two components we're going to be talking about. We're going to talk about oil. I'm going to write oil down. O-I-L. And water. This is the word water. And this is the word oil. Now I just want to let you know who you hear in the background is my nephew Aiden. So you're gonna hear him throughout. So just, you can laugh. It's funny to me. But we're going to talk about oil and water in our science experiment. And Miss Leah is going to show you what happens when oil and water are together. You ready? You ready to find out? Yeah? Okay, let's go. Kids, we're back in Miss Leah's kitchen. And what you see here are the materials that you need to discover why oil and water do not mix. They do not mix. And you're going to find out. The materials you need is some vegetable oil, water, a glass clear object. It can be a jar, a bowl, a vase is what I have. And also different colors of food coloring. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is pour the water inside of the jar. So Miss Leah pours it, and I'm pouring the water in the jar. Okay, water inside the jar. Now I'm going to pour some vegetable oil on top. Now, depending on the jar or the object you use, you want to make sure it's like 3/4 full of water, and then at least half a cup of vegetable oil. And I'm going to get my measuring cup. Here's my measuring cup, and it's 1/2. Pour the vegetable oil in the measuring cup. Pour it in the water. And what I want you to do, kids, is take a look at what happens when I pour the oil in the water. Watch what happens. Let's observe. I'm going to put another half a cup of oil. No, a half of this half. So just half of a half. Because I want the thickness of the oil to really be clear and shown. So I poured some more oil in, and you all observed that the oil went down to the bottom, but then it came back up. What's happening to the oil on top of the water? What's the oil doing? Yes, it's floating. The oil is floating on top of the water. And look, it's not even mixing with it. If I get a spoon, little spoon here, and I'm going to try to mix the oil with the water, and let's see what happens. Let's observe. So I'm stirring it, stirring it, stirring it, stirring it. No matter how many times I stir it or go back and forth, let's watch what happens. Where does the oil go? Right back up on the top. Okay, so we see, children, the oil floating on top of the water. And this is such a simple science experiment because it teaches really, really big and important concepts. It's easy to observe how the oil and water do not mix. No matter how much Miss Leah stirred it with the spoon and moves it all around, it's never going to mix. And that's because that the oil and water have certain, chemical bonds. The oil has a certain bond and the water has a certain bond. And because of these different bonds that they have, they're never going to mix. It prevents them from mixing at all. So we're going to do something really cool now, so that you can see what happens when we put food coloring inside of the jar with the oil and the water. I'm going to put a couple droplets of red. And if you look, as I put it in, it's almost like the oil captured it. And then watch what happens. Once the food coloring reaches the water, it bursts open. I'm going to put some yellow. And let's see what happens to the colors once they get to mix with each other. Isn't that cool? That is so awesome. Food coloring is water-based, so it will only dissolve in the water layer. The drops of food coloring beat up in the oil and rest between the oil and the water until gravity is what makes things come down. So until gravity eventually will pull down the food coloring into the lower water layer, and then once it bursts into the water layer, then it immediately starts to mix in and spread out. And if you look, it kind of creates a spectacular fireworks. I'm going to put some green in there and see what happens. And if you noticed, when the yellow and the red mixed together, it made a new color. What color do you see inside of the water? Orange, yep. Red and yellow mixed together makes orange. Now, Miss Leah put some green in there. I don't think the green will mix with anything, but we can always just observe and see, what happens. So, we learned that water and oil do not mix because of the chemical bonds that each of them have. And also the oil floats on top of the water. And it floats because the oil is less dense than water. Meaning that it will always end up on top no matter which liquid is added first. If we put the oil in first and then the water on top, the oil will still float on top of the water. But there goes another burst of food coloring. Yeah, so once gravity pulls the food coloring down through the oil and into the water, it starts to spread and burst open. Thank you for joining I Love Learning with Miss Leah. Another cool science experiment. Easy materials. I hope you have them so you can see this really cool science experiment and learn about how oil and water do not mix. Till next time, bye kids. Mwah.